Well, I am excited to be here. Yuda said that right. My name is Max. And should I just do a quick little intro? Yeah, if that's okay. Quick intro. I am 35 years old, I think, 36. I forget every year. Main thing is I was born in 85, so I figure those of you guys that know math, I should be in that area. Married for 15 years, gonna be 15. Yeah, gonna be 15 in April this next year. Honestly, like the best marriage. Like, you guys should be jealous of my marriage. Like, I kid you not, like, there's nothing wrong with when you've got an amazing marriage, like, you're just like, man, I wish people would have what I have, right? Is there anything wrong with that? No, like, amazing wife, obviously amazing husband, I mean, right? I think it stems from the leadership. That's why the marriage is so great, which, again, is me. 3 kids, Jasmine, 13, super brilliant. Felicity is the youngest one. She just turned 9. Ian is sandwiched in between. He is 11. So really, really cool kids. Super different. A lot of fun. That's me. We work. We serve. We've been serving at church for a while. We love to have fun. Enjoy the outdoors in Spokane and Idaho. Idaho, where we live, is literally right on the border of Washington and Idaho. That's kind of where we're at. We're on the Washington side, but we spend a lot of time in Idaho. So that's the intro. So we are going to jump in, but before we do, I'm going to have you guys do something. And this is actually a practice that will help you, and it's going to help me, okay? So what we're going to do is I'm going to set a timer up, and I'll tell you why we're doing this, and this will dramatically help you. So we're going to set the timer to 30 seconds. Ready? As soon as I find it, 30 seconds. So you guys are going to stand up. Go ahead. That's you. You guys can stand up. So what we're going to do for 30 seconds is, Phil knows we hit the gym every morning. I know you might not believe it, but we do. But what we're going to do is we're going to do a quick little exercise. It's called quick feet. Does anyone know what quick feet is? Right? It's kind of like happy feet. Trick to quick feet. It's very simple, right? You don't want to stand straight. Okay, to do a successful quick feet, you gotta bend your knees a little bit, right? And it's just like you see with football training. You can spread your legs a little, but your goal is you move your feet quickly, and you can't stop for 30 seconds. Okay? Here's the thing: if the girl or guy next to you stops, look at them and be like, "Dude," but don't stop while you say "dude." Be like, get on it, right? So we're gonna go 30 seconds. Doesn't have to be super fast or slow. The main thing is watch your pace. If you start at a certain pace, stay the same pace for 30 seconds. Okay, I'll tell you when to go. Ready, set, go. Don't stop. Keep the same pace. Keep the same pace. Don't stop. Come on, come on, come on. You don't have to move your hands. Your hands can stay here. Don't stop. 30 seconds. Some of you are like, oh, 30 seconds is easy. Not if you don't stop. Come on, come on, come on. 5 more seconds. All right, good. Woo! Okay, now sit down. Okay. Why is that important? Everybody has a different technique. First of all, as for some of you to realize how out of shape you are, right? You should probably hit the gym. No, second thing is, why is it important? It's basic science. Here's the science, right? It's important for me to do that. Some people do it before stage. Some people don't do it at all. What happens is you get your heart rate going, sends blood where? To your brain, right? Allows you to think creatively, process things. Super important for you to do it also. You just had food, right? You're chilling, like really mellow worship group. We like you guys. You guys can throw one in there with some energy, right? Just be like, ah. So all that's saying is the mood was set for you guys just to chill. Your blood's not pumping, and just like it's important for me to execute on what I have to do, it's important for you to execute on what you need to hear and listen to. Does that make sense? So, quick recap. Ilya and Yuda asked me to do from last year. Wasn't here last year. Love the topic that you guys had. I'm just going to do a quick little thing on last year. Then we're going to dive into what this year is all about. You guys ready? If you're ready, say go. Go. Nice. Okay, last year, what was the topic? Do you remember? Right, absolutely. Renew your mind. Okay, Romans 12:2. Awesome verse. We're going to read it, break it down a little bit, just do a recap, and then jump into this year. Here's Romans 12:2. Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, okay, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. By the renewing of your mind, okay, then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is. And then the last part is, it's good, it's pleasing, and it's a perfect will. Simple way to break this down. Love this passage, right? Starts from the beginning. Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy. First thing we need to acknowledge is we are a byproduct of God's mercy, right? If you don't get that today, like, you are completely missing out. If you're looking at your parents or your friends or the way that you were raised, and you're constantly like, well, I'm not here because of these things. I'm not here because my dad sucks. I'm not here because my mom sucks. I'm not here because parents do this. All of that, you're missing one big piece, the mercy part. The fact that you are here. If you don't understand that that is God's mercy, right? And that you can do whatever you need to do with it, you're missing that part. Based on it is, hey, we should be the most grateful, unbelievable people, not based on what happened in our lives, but the fact that we are here, that we live here, we've got an opportunity to make decisions and move forward, okay? He's calling us, he's saying, hey, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. So my instant thing is like, hey, God, you want me to offer my body to you holy and pleasing? And I'm just thinking like body, holy. So I'm thinking like, I should probably get my ears pierced. Maybe do like a nose piercing, right? Because it's just like, hey, he's talking about my body. He wants it holy. We should do a few holes, right? It's like, what are you talking about? It's like, no, he says, hey, I want your body. And then he jumps into holy. Does he need your body? He doesn't just need your body. Like, he's talking about holy. And guess what? You're not holy based on what you do. You're holy based on what the Lord has done in you, right? So what he's saying is, I want you, and I want you to be holy. And the way that you're holy is by putting your trust in me, giving your life as a sacrifice to me. That's what makes you holy. And that's what makes you pleasing to him, okay? And this is the other interesting part. It's like, and he says, this, right, is your true and proper worship. So all these things, right, it is an act of worship. So the same thing we did here when they're singing, right, we're glorifying him. The same thing here. The way that we live our life is an act of worship. Our life radiates us elevating him above ourselves. The way that we do things, the way that we live, it takes, and when people see that, they're just like, it radiates God. It shows him off. That's what it does. And then we jump in farther and says, hey, don't be conformed to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Love this. I don't know those of you guys that have studied behavioral change. I love behavioral change, huge industry. But the point of it is like, it's just a big thing today. And everybody struggles with it when it talks about the world and Christians, everybody. The idea that we always have is like, hey, why can't I change? Why can't I change? I want to do this thing, and yet I end up doing this thing, right? Why can't I alter my behavior? And Scripture here answers that part and says, because the way that you change your behavior, it starts at a certain point, and where does it start? Where does it start? What? Starts with trying harder, right? No, it says right here. It says, don't be conformed to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. It starts right up here. I remember this awesome study that I read that was really, really good about behavioral change. I can relate to it I don't know if have any of you guys spent any time in jail? Anybody? We got one right here. Don't be shy. I mean, we know you've been there. Okay? Just because it's a day doesn't mean it doesn't count. Like you still spent time serving in jail. I spent a day there, right? And this is one of the, you ever play a game where you do like 2 truths and a lie? Like I always use this, and it's actually the truth. And people are like, oh, no way. So the day that I spent in jail was in Alcatraz, which is considered a true thing, because I spent a day in Alcatraz, right behind bars, touring the jail. I couldn't leave because you're on an island. Well, this is the cool thing that this lady came up with as she was doing research. She noticed that out of all the research that she did, there's an extremely high statistics of people that leave jail. What happens to them? They come back. They come back. So she started doing studies on it and figuring out like, hey, how can I fix this? How can I fix this? And then she figured out, well, here's a huge list of what we can do to change people's behaviors. Long list. You can't do it all. So then she came up with a strategy of looking for key things that she could alter that will affect the rest of the list. Because you can't go for all of it, so she did 2. And the crazy thing is she had unbelievable success with people that were in the jail that would leave and that they would never come back. And her thing is she focused on 2 things. And she noticed that when she successfully did those 2 things, all the other things lined up. Now, I'm not going to go through that list with you guys, but I related to that on us. Each of us, we can go in here and we can make a list of all the behavioral things we want to change. I'm going to present to you an idea. And here's the idea. The first one that real causes behavioral changes, you have to have a relationship with Christ. Has to be here, right? The second thing is going to be interesting, but to me, I believe it 100%, and it's crazy because it's super simple. The second thing that creates real behavioral change is something that a lot of people do not do, but it's very simple. You guys want to know what I think it is? Ready? Reading. Reading. I think it's reading. Because when you look at guys that I work with and girls that are young adults, one of the things that people do not spend time doing, one of the things that you'll notice with the pastors that are here, that every time they wish that they could get one thing to their congregation to do that will alter their life. It will alter their behavior. And that is if only you could possibly faithfully read. Right? And here I'm talking about God's word. Like that's the thing that will alter the way that you live your life and your behavior. And yet we jump right into it and we're like, hey, I want to change this, I want to change this, I want to change this. Hey, have you spent time in God's word and allowed it to transform your mind? Yeah, I'll get to that. I'm busy trying to change, right? We'll start by changing one thing, a daily, consistent, intimate pattern of reading God's word. That is something that will change you for sure. And I'm telling you, like, I am convinced if somebody commits to that, it will blow your mind on where you're going to be next year. It will blow your mind. You will see healthy, consistent patterns of transformation in your life based on that one thing alone. Okay? So, that said, renewed by your mind, transformed, okay? Then you will be able to test and compare. This cuts to the core of who we are, right? And the core of who we are is the Lord knows that we always want to test things. We're oftentimes not the people like, hey, like I just told you this idea, right? And you're kind of like, well, like my 9-year-old. Hey, don't do that. Why? What do you mean why? Like that's such a stupid question. Well, no, like why? And that's us, right? And then as a kid, you ask why. As you grow up, it's like, well, I don't really want to do that. I want to do what I want to do. And then you grow up a little bit more, and then your mindset's like, well, you know what? You don't know what I'm going through. That's your guys' generation now. Parents are like, hey, I want you to do this. And your way of, just what we see here, right? Renew your mind, being changed. Your mentality now is, you don't know what I'm going through. I know better. And here he's saying that with the process of renewing your mind, It's for you. It's for you to prove to yourself because you need it. If you do not prove it to yourself, you're nowhere closer to where you want to be. Nobody can convince you. Nobody can prove it to you. You need to do the legwork, and you need to prove it to yourself. That happens when you're renewing your mind, right? And you start to see, and you prove it. And then after you prove it, the last part is great. Then, right? You will see that God's will is good, pleasing, and send it backwards. How do we send it backwards? Very simple. It's all right. If somebody is arguing with God's will for their life, it's very simple. Like, there's no point to talk to people like that. Why? Because you haven't spent the time to prove it to yourself. Why would I prove it to you? Why would I prove it to you that the way that God has chosen to have us live our life and the guidelines that he's put in place for us and the direction that he's guiding us, why would it be on me to convince you of these things? When here it says, when your mind is renewed, that is a process with you and God, that you prove to yourself that what he wants me to do, the way that he wants me to live my life, it is 100% approved. Like, I believe it. That's what I'm going to do. And then those people, you will notice, how easy is it to send one of those people off track? How easy? I can tell you right now, it's almost impossible. A person that is renewed by the Lord, his mind is renewed, that has unbelievable core convictions. I am telling you, it is very difficult to a person that has proved it to himself that the way that the Lord wants him to live his life is good. It is the best thing, and it is pleasing. It is very challenging to distract that person from making decisions that the Lord doesn't want him to do. Does that make sense? That was last year. This year, we're jumping into history makers. You guys ready? Yes? So, awesome topic. I'm going to go through a few things on just basics on history making. Ready? And then we're going to jump into some illustrations, which I love. Here we go. One of the things that I've observed, again, with history making, one of the sad things about making, being a history maker, the sad part of being a history maker is you're not the one writing the history. And the fact is that we all love control. Like, we love control. We want to be in control of our lives and the things that happen to us and the things in our future. But here's the reality is you are not the one writing history about your life. It is done by somebody else. It is done by an observer and a spectator, right? And in most times when they're writing history about you, one of the abilities that they don't have is they do not have the ability to see your heart. So the only way that they can judge you based on what you do is based on your actions, based on what you do and how you did it. All they can do at the end of the day is they can speculate, they can guess your heart behind it, but they don't know. So one fact is, history, it's not written by us. It's written by people that are observing what we do. Okay? What is it? Well, history, I believe it's basically somebody putting together past events of observation. I believe that, there's people that look for the facts and they go off of the facts. There's also history on the other side where it's based on observation. People, they interpret actually what happened and they take the history and they write it down from that perspective. That's what it is. Okay? The other thing that is kind of scary to me and not super exciting is, again, it's a point of it's out of control. Like, no matter what we do, our history is being written. So it's not like a thing where you're just like, hey, you know what? I'm not going to do anything, so I'm not worried about it. Or the other guy's like, no, I'm going to do all these amazing things. Has nothing to do with that. No matter what we do or how we choose to live our life, the history is being written. It's out of our control, correct? Like, it has nothing to do with us. It just keeps going whether we like it or not. One of the things that I like about history and about history makers is just a few basic illustrations of stuff that I think is pretty cool. Okay, first one, we're going to go from the ugly to the good, and then we're going to finish with Jesus, of course. Simple history maker, right? There's a reason why nobody, including you guys, when you guys have kids, are going to call your first newborn son Adolf, right? Like, you would be nuts, okay? Because Adolf Hitler, he made history. He somehow successfully killed over 6 million Jews and other people that were not Jews. And he did it not by himself. He convinced others to join him in this amazing task that he came up with. 6 million people. So I did some research. That's half of Pennsylvania. You guys have 12.3 million people living in Pennsylvania. So he somehow, in not a very long period of time, managed to execute half of your state's population. Like that. And he made history. Crazy? We'll do a little bit positive then, right? 1930s. Anybody know Herman Lay? Anybody know Herman Lay? Also made history. Amazing dude, 1930s. He was a guy that worked for a shipping company, and they shipped goods from place to place. Awesome guy. And then the owner of that company passed away, died. Company was struggling. It was, mid-30s. War, very difficult time. People couldn't afford stuff. And the crazy thing is, he ended up buying out this company for $60,000 back then, which was crazy. And one of the things that were available was, because of the storms and the crops, and it was very, very difficult for people to get food at a cheap, inexpensive cost. That was the biggest thing, is trying to get food to provide and to feed people during a war or after the war, to get through that. Herman Lay bought this company, and one of the things that was available, and a lot of it was available, and it grew because a lot of the farms were wiped out with the dust storms and everything else. Guess what it was? It was potatoes, right? So Herman Lay's, right? He made history. I mean, you go to a barbecue, and what's the first thing you grab? You grab some delicious potato chips, right? And that's what he did. And the creative part of how he made history is potatoes would expire. So he could only sell them locally. There's no way, because they were, and they'd put them in bags, and then they would get grease everywhere, and then they'd have mold. So he came up with a way to seal them, to protect them. He was the first guy that came up with a plastic bag. With a bag, it wasn't even plastic, it was lined and coated. And he found a way to seal it where they wouldn't go bad. So, and it blew up because it was very affordable for most people to acquire chips or potato chips and eat them as a source of nutrition at a very low cost. And there was ample amounts of potatoes, and that's what he did. So he started his empire, bought a business from the widow that passed away, and started Lay's Chips. His rival, also a very interesting guy, is Charles Dolan. Charles Dolan, also very interesting. Their family owned a little grocery store. Same thing, early 1900s. And they could not afford to keep that grocery store. Same thing, times after war, people don't have money. People don't have the money to buy stuff in grocery stores. Sales across the boards on all industries are suffering big time. And he didn't know what to do. They didn't know what to do. They couldn't keep the store going. That's the only thing they had. So he got offered an opportunity by a Mexican gentleman that decided to go back to Mexico. And this Mexico gentleman, what he did is he took the dough from tortillas. You guys know what tortillas are, right? So he would take that dough, and you could convert it into a tortilla. But what he did is he made it more of like a doughy, wet mixture, put it through a special little thing, and they would come out, and then he would cut them by hand with scissors, and then he would bake them or deep fry them. Today, those are known as what? Fritos. Fritos. That's Mr. Dolan. He bought that business from this Mexican guy for $100, which is the money that they barely had. And he bought that business, and they started doing that. And it struggled for a very long time. But luckily, he was an engineer, and they couldn't make things fast enough. So he had to come up with tools and equipment that could produce this quickly. And they did that. And then the other thing they noticed is as they started producing the material quickly, they still couldn't sell it, right? His brother was the first one, a very smart marketing guy. He came up with what we see every day, and it is a little stand with little clips on it, right? It's about this big. And it sits on the cash, next to the cash register, right? And what he came up with is basically they started giving these metal frames away to grocery stores and gas stations, and the chips would be right there by the cash register. So then he realized that people are compulsive buyers. So what they would do is they would come up to the cash register, and they'd be like, oh, Lay's chips, right? Or Fritos. So they would buy it compulsively, and through that little understanding how people think, their company blew up. And that's what happened. Then they started, obviously, fighting over territory, and in the end, they ended up coming together. Frito, Lay's, right? History makers. People love their chips. Multi-billion-dollar company, made in the early 1930s. My favorite one though, for a history maker, I don't know if you guys know this, but his name is Milton Hershey. Yeah. Milton Hershey, his nickname, do you know what it was? The King of Chocolate. Can you imagine if that was your nickname? Talk about a history maker. Milton Hershey. Awesome, awesome history maker. Early 1900s, he was a wealthy person, a good businessman. He started his endeavors with caramel. What he did with caramel that was different, he had European roots, right, from Germany. And the way that he made his caramel, and he made it really good, is he implemented adding real raw milk. So, after that, he loved it, did really good, built an empire out of it, then he sold it. Walked away from the caramel thing, and he was like, you know what, I'm going to make chocolate. But he's like, I'm going to make chocolate like nobody else makes it, the European way, not as I'm going to make it with milk. Raw milk from a cow. I don't know if you know this, cows go moo, okay? Moo. They're not machines. So, you guys are next door to this place and this legacy that he built. He, Mr. Hershey, learned quickly that they could not have kids. Very wealthy person, unbelievable entrepreneur, could not have kids. So what he did is he invested his time in other people. That's what you want to do. Here's how crazy and what he did. Again, wealthy guy, definitely took crazy risks. He bought acreage in between cow farms, dairy farms. He bought the acreage and he started building a factory to make chocolate. Do you know what the crazy part is? He built the factory, he built the town, he built churches, he built communities, and the whole time he did not have the recipe for Hershey's chocolate. He didn't have it. He went through one guy, second guy, third guy, fourth guy, couldn't figure it out until finally, after he built a company, a town, a community, he finally got it. Can you imagine what kind of bold move that was? The amazing thing I like about him, his mentality on how to take care of people was unbelievable. He cared so much for people. He was, I'd say, one of the early people in that industry where he could understand that the way that people felt and the way that people lived, it 100% related to the way that they work. And that's what he did. He literally built the town for them. He built churches and parks and swimming areas. His thing is he wanted people to enjoy and to take pride in this amazing place that they not only work, but they live. Sad part with him, he got very successful and he's good, but the same people that he took care of during the war that hit everybody, Hershey's was okay. You know why they were okay? They were okay because they allowed Hershey's to be an essential food. So they would allow that because Hershey's was sent over for the soldiers to fight. So they were allowed to keep their factories open. Okay? Some factories weren't. Everything was, there's food portioning. Farmers and everybody else, you could not eat as much as you wanted to because they portioned the food because there was X amount of food that had to be shipped out to the soldiers that were fighting in war. So it wasn't just like buy whatever you want. Nope. Here's the crazy part is he did not unemploy or lay off a single employee during the war. Not a single guy or woman in the whole company. Didn't do it. Took his losses, kept every single person employed. And then about a year into it, his own people that he took care of, that he cared for, that he provided wages, they rebelled against him. There was a group of people that worked for him. They literally took the company hostage, shut everything down, and they just weren't happy with what they were getting paid, and they felt that they weren't being taken care of. And the crazy thing is, he didn't even go down there. History shows that he didn't even go down there and didn't even deal with the conflict. And I could see why, as a business owner, he was blown away. He was absolutely blown away that the people that he showed he cared for, they turned against him. It got so bad because he was amongst, milk farmers. Well, 80% of that milk was consumed by Hershey's. And what happened is when they shut the company down, all the milk farmers around, their main, provider, they were done. They didn't need the milk. So what actually happened was the amazing part of what he did, and you can see how it affected the milk farmers. After this was happening for a lengthy period of time, they came into town literally with the intent to kill every single person that was doing that. I don't know how many died, but they stepped in, milk farmers stepped in and basically just resolved the situation for him. And sad about after that is literally just a short period after that, he handed off the business to his successor to run the whole thing. And I personally think, relating to a little bit of that, I think he just couldn't handle it. I think he just couldn't handle that blow with a person that has such an amazing heart to serve people, to take such a huge risk to make this, to have it centered around community and people, to have it like backfire on you like that, man, like I'm telling you, that's a big blow, okay? So those are some people that I think we can relate to on the food side, right? They're history makers. They did it in a time of struggle and difficulty and amazing, amazing opportunity, but you really had to take some serious, serious risk. I'll do one quick one, last one, and then we'll jump into Jesus because he's kind of the main thing. The other one was Heinz. I love Heinz. Heinz, such a loser, right? Really cool. Like he tried to come up with ketchup, and he was coming up with ketchup, and he failed brutally the first time where the bank took everything he had. He had his mom's house as collateral. They kicked his mom out of her house. I mean, talk about a loser, right? Kicked him out of the house, put him in jail. He served some time. Then he went back to it, trying to come up with something else. Finally came up with a good ketchup recipe and blew up. But the thing that I really like about ketchup, do you guys know why he even came up with ketchup? No, of course you don't. So I'll tell you. He came up with ketchup because what was happening is when the city started being built, like New York and everything else, people were used to living rural in the outskirts of town. So because it was happening so fast, everybody was smart like you millennials, right? And they're like, hey, let's go live in the city, all right? And everybody's just like, yeah, let's do it. And then they don't realize there's no grocery stores in the city. So like, yeah, we can live here, but how do we eat here? So what happened was people in the country, they had to provide food for people in the city. So in Russian, it's a rynek, right? That's what you would see in these small towns. Is you'd have this cool city that everybody's excited about, people pooping in the streets and no decent septic systems or whatever, but yeah, hey, we live in the city. And then meanwhile, you have the working people that are like, hey, you have to eat, you big dummy. Here you go. They would bring the food into the cities and they would sell it. Well, ketchup was made because there was no refrigeration. There was no refrigeration for meat. And ketchup was primarily used because by the time that you would buy the meat and cook it, it would be bad. Like it would taste bad. It would spoil. And one of the main reasons they would use ketchup was just to kill the taste of bad, spoiled meat. Right? Now you guys love it so much, you don't even taste the meat. Freaking pour that stupid ketchup all over your steak or your potatoes and just like, you want some potatoes with your ketchup? Like, really? Like, enjoy the food. So that was Heinz. First, we're going to talk about, obviously, Jesus. Jesus did an unbelievable job at making history. One of the ways he made history, and some of you guys have experienced this in your life, some of you guys have not. The biggest thing that he's done in my life, and he's done in many of yours, is he reconciled us to the Lord. There was a gap that was there between us. And Jesus, I don't know how, came on this earth through a virgin, was born as a man and God, did nothing wrong, committed no sin, showed unbelievable commitment and love and compassion, and he paid a price of death for that. And with that, he inherited the authority here and in heaven, and he reconciled us before the Lord. Well, now, the Lord looks on us through him, and the Lord continues to love us and encourage us and bless us and guide us. He changed history for us. Big time. Today, we live in a time where we get something that we do not deserve. Every single one of you here, you have been given an unbelievable gift. And guess what? You did not deserve it. You were forgiven, and you shouldn't have been forgiven. Your sins were taken away, and they shouldn't have been taken away. Your punishment was wiped clean, and guess what? It shouldn't have been. And that's what he did. The amazing thing is that's what he did. He changed history for all of us. Second part that I really want to dive into just a little bit is the second part of what he did and how he actually did it. Jesus also made others that changed history. It wasn't solely on him. So I'm going to read this passage you guys are going to be studying a lot more of, okay? And the question to me is like how? And then we read in Matthew at the very end. Then Jesus came to them, 28 at the very end. Jesus came to them and said, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me, right? Therefore, go, make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to obey everything I have taught you. Okay? So the first part is Jesus himself he's a history maker. The second part is he somehow made other history makers. That's the part that I just want to focus on a little bit. In this passage, he's got his disciples. Some of them made history in very bad ways. Who's that? Ready? Huh? Judas, yeah. Like super, super sad history making. But he did it, right? The others made history. And here's the third category. Third category is there's a bunch of people that didn't make the history book. They didn't make it. But these specific people that did make the history book, here's the thing that's interesting to me. And I'm just thinking Lord, how, if you want me to be a history maker, there's a process here. And we see it here. And I'm going to read it for you guys one more time, and then we're going to break it down. Then Jesus came to them and said, all authority in heaven and earth has been given to me. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to obey everything I have taught you. Three things I think are characteristics of what the Lord is trying to do with people. And here's the ultimate truth, right? Not everybody's going to be a tremendous history maker. There's nothing wrong with being an average history maker. Okay? There's different levels. So I never want people to be like, well, you know what? I'm not like these 11 apostles, right? To me personally, I love being the average history maker. There's nothing sad about that. Everybody downs those people that don't come out. It's the same thing as you ever hear testimonies of people coming to the Lord, right? And there's this one guy that's yeah, man, I served time and I slept with a bunch of girls and I did all these things and the Lord just changed me. And everyone's just oh, wow, right? And then you've got this other guy like me. It's yeah, my dad was a pastor. I grew up in the church, serving the church when I was 14. Pretty much never did anything wrong in my life, Everybody's yeah, cool, man. It's we like that guy, right? That guy's a history maker. It's no, there's, don't do that to yourself. One of the things that I see that Jesus did in an amazing way with these specific guys, and he's continuing to do it today. Here's some of the things with history makers to identify them. First one, a history maker, okay, he has an awareness of God's authority. Okay, at the very beginning of that passage, it said, hey, I've got authority over heaven and earth. First one is a person that's a history maker. He understands and believes and submits to his authority, understanding that God is in control and I am not. His authority before mine. First characteristic. Second one, okay, they are making disciples. A history maker is one that is in the process. He says there, he says, go, right, and make disciples, and then he tells them how to do it. So a history maker is one that is in the move and actually doing it. He's not thinking about it. He's not talking about it. He's doing it. And the third one, they teach them to obey everything I have commanded you. I love this part. So a history maker, he teaches, okay, if she's my disciple and I'm a history maker, we oftentimes miss this part. The Lord told me to teach you, right, everything that he has commanded you. Is that what he said? No. He said, hey, I want you to, what's your name? Dasha. He's like, hey, Max, I want you as a history maker to teach Dasha what I have commanded who? Me. And what that shows is like, we oftentimes want to teach Dasha, like, Dasha, this is what you got to do, girl. Like, marry this way and don't hang out with these people and don't be doing these things. And yet he says, no. I want you to teach Dasha and disciple her with the stuff that I'm doing in your life, what I'm doing in you, what I'm commanding you, the years that I've spent with you. Don't tell her theory. Tell her what I'm telling you. Tell her the experience part. So quickly on those three things, they acknowledge that God's he's in authority. Second thing is they're in the process of making disciples. They're going. And third thing is they're teaching people from a place of relationship that they have with the Lord. Not head knowledge, not what I read and heard, but specifically what God is doing in my life and what he's commanded me to do and what I've practiced and I've learned. I'm laying that over to you, and I'm going to help you with those things. Okay? So, the thing that I've learned here is that the amazing thing that he has done, he created history with what he did, and that is he reconciled us to the Lord. The second thing is he continues to make history makers, and that's us. The part that I love on how he makes history makers is he does it in a relational atmosphere. Let's say that one more time. He creates history makers in a relational atmosphere. Now, everybody knows relationships and about relationships, and everybody uses that word a lot. So I had this amazing experience to take one of these classes recently and dive into a little book that really helped me. And it literally kind of laid out and defined a little bit more clearly the relationship part of it. Because it is super crucial for a history maker to have this relationship part down. And Jesus, being amazing, he models it to us. So we got a quick slide. He's going to show it up here. And this is just a simple way to define levels of relationship. Okay? So, relationships have 5 components. Is that 5 or is it just me? That's 5, right? I want you to know that with Jesus, as modeling it to us in this relationship, how he's made history makers, this is put in the proper order on it moves to the right. Okay? The way that Jesus made history makers is first, he had a relationship, which for us is a broad definition. Here's what's going to help us to see that. First one is, he spent time to know those people. One of the key parts to a relationship is to know who you're in relationship with. How long did he spend with his disciples on this first part, to know? How long? Give or take. Doesn't have to be exact, no wrong answers. How long? 3 years, right? So in those 3 years, he got to know them, and what did they do? They got to know him. They saw his patterns, They saw the way he thinks. They saw the way that he does things. And in return, he saw their patterns. He saw the way that they react to situations. He saw their consistency of faith. He saw the things that they say and they repeat. He saw their struggles. It is impossible to have a relationship without this part, and that is to know. Now, all these areas, they're kind of like the guy in the back that's adjusting our volumes. They're kind of like toggle switches where you lower them and you higher them. It's that one over there. Okay? So we're called to a balance in these areas. So the first one is to know. Okay? Your job is to consistently be raising that bar. The second thing from there is to trust. It's very difficult to trust somebody if you do not know. I think if you look a little bit deeper in Judas's case, one of the reasons on the trust part with him had a lot to do with the knowing part. A consistent thing with trust, with Jesus portrayed to his disciples, and they did in return, is a growing level of trusting. Okay? Third one is to rely. We see that in a consistent pattern in those 3 years. Okay? We see that Jesus slowly started to rely on them to do certain things. Yes? And in return, what did they do? They started to rely on him for what? For food, right? For transportation, for answering questions that they had no idea how to answer. And we see the healthy combination growing of how he relies on them, they rely on him, and it also continues to grow. Then we've got commitment. Commitment, crazy. I don't know how he did it, but from the very first part, it's a wild and different approach, but it worked for him. He literally came up to them and said, hey, come and follow me. And I don't know what was going on in their life that they chose to make that decision, but they did, and they committed. And then we noticed that his commitment definitely grew stronger to them. He didn't give a lot of time to other people. His commitment was there, and we see that their commitment was also there. We see a level of growing commitment with both of them. That's what made the relationship. And then the last one is touch, and I would say intimacy, right? Intimacy and touch, where we see also as that starts to grow in that relationship where they care for one another, right? We see Jesus talking and saying, hey, do you really love me? Multiple times. And we see the aftermath of what Peter did, how he responded. We see that level of touch and intimacy, that was a big deal, right? Doing the things that he shouldn't have done, saying the things that he knew he didn't want to say, but he did it anyways. And we see that. So, that's what he invested into his disciples. It took time. It took 3 years. And I believe that because of this relationship, I believe that is one of the biggest reasons why they had a huge impact and continued to be history makers like Jesus. Here's the trouble that we have. If this is a working flow of relationships, right? Let's play with it a little bit. For us. Let's pretend that there's toggle switches up there and we adjust. Okay? Give me the levels for people that are new believers. Somebody that, let's pretend that they came here and they're like, Lord, I believe that you're my authority. I'm going to put my trust in you. Great. Okay, let's talk about that. So let's start with knowing. Where are they at on knowing on 1 to 10? 3? That's kind of brave, but anybody else? 1, right? They don't know. This is completely new to them. Okay, where are they at on the trust thing? Trust is 10. Anybody else? Trust is 10. Trust can be 10. Yeah, 100% trust. Okay, where are they at on the rely thing? What do you think? This is an active conversation. Somebody just came to the Lord. Where do you think out of 1 to 10 they're on the rely? Huh? 1 or 2, yeah. They're kind of like, you know what, Lord? Like, I heard what you said. You haven't really proved anything, so my rely level is going to be pretty low. And then where are they on the commit part? Like 0, right? And some of them might be like where, you know what, I'm a 10 because I feel like a 10, but hit Monday, oh man, I'm like a 1, right? So yeah, and then what about the last one? New believer, where are they at on that one? I would say since they gave their life to the Lord, there's a level of intimacy there, and we're all emotional creatures. I would say yes. 10. I would say 10. Super excited. The Lord did something. I don't know what he did. I can feel it. I can touch it, right? And I just want you guys to know that right there, sadly, is what a lot of people, when it comes to their relationship with the Lord, a lot of people that are mature believers have the scale of a person that just came to the Lord. One of the most saddest things that you can do is to live backwards. And some people do it. They go from camp to camp or service to service, and their main indicator for their relationship with the Lord is the intimacy. They want to experience and feel God. And what happens is sometimes they'll come here and they're just like, man, I just felt God's presence so amazing. I know nothing about him. I trust him for my experiences because I want that experience. I'm relying on him for what? For my intimacy and my experience, right? I'm committed to him as long as what? I can experience him, and then at the end, I know what? Nothing about him. I know nothing about him. So to me, what I call that, people that are really high on the touch level, on intimacy, and very low on the other levels, I call that, it's slightly inappropriate, but it's the reality of it, I call that a one-night stand. That's what it is. That's what we're living in. As a Christian, that's what you're living in. If that's a scale in your relationship, that's what you're living in. You're super excited about the one-night stand. You have no idea who that person was. Your mind and your heart is on all high. You're super excited. It was an amazing experience. And then everything settles and you can't wait to go do it again. That's it. But when it comes to everything else, you know nothing about it. And then sadly what happens is, same with Christians is, the same thing with like a one-night stand in the world starts to happen in the Christian world, and that is you start to have this emptiness and you feel guilt, right? Because you're like, hey, I experienced God once, and now like I don't know what he's saying, I don't know where he's at, I don't really have any time to spend with him. So then you're kind of like, man, I don't know if this thing is really for me. I gave my life to the Lord, I probably should have done that. Maybe it's too early, maybe it's too late. I kind of, and all of it has to do with, really, the general idea is you don't have a relationship with the Lord, and you definitely don't have a healthy one. These indicators are not saying there's something wrong. These indicators are just here for you to know that relationships needs to be balanced. And relationships start from the left to the right, that way. It's very important for you to have a relationship with the Lord like he did with his disciples. It takes time. It takes time. You need to have a genuine desire and a willingness to know who you're in relationship with. That's why when it comes to even normal relationships, if somebody's getting married and they've been dating for 2 months, for me, super red flag. Super red flag. Because I think I would find out which scale is a lot higher than that one. And I'm pretty sure I would find out which ones are, right? And you think it's all great, but your discernment and your thinking is gone. So, what I want to challenge you guys today is, I would love for all of us to be history makers, for sure. You guys, me, my kids, our families. But it's already been modeled to us how that happens. And the way that happens is, the Lord, he made the history first. He gave us something that we couldn't get on our own. And the second thing is he modeled to us, as he develops other history makers, the way that he does it, and he does it through relationships. So if we want to impact this world and make history, here's the thing is, it happens with the Lord, one. And the second thing is it happens right here. Happens with relationships with us. He didn't call us to do anything on our own. And that's why relationships are challenging and they're hard. So I think we're going to pray here soon. I think the piano is going to play soon. But I hope that this is helpful because this has been super helpful for me on really defining clearly what a relationship looks like with him. And I think when you think about each of these categories, I want you to pray and spend some time with the Lord and be like, hey, Lord, Like, I'm so glad that you gave me like a brain and you gave me the opportunity to think and discern. I definitely see myself in this relationship scale. And I definitely see where, you know what, I'm in a season right now where I really just want to experience you. I want you to like fire me up or excite me, make me cry, make me feel like you're here, you know. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. Like, tell the Lord that if that's where you're at. But the thing that I would look out for there would be like, hey, how long have you been there? How long have you been where your touch level with the Lord has been on high and everything else has been on low and you don't care? You're a place where you just don't care. And he's calling us to have a balance in these areas. So if you don't have a desire to know him and you're cold to that, that's what I would pray. Be like, Lord, I honestly have been in a season in my life where I haven't applied any effort to know you. And that bothers me today. How can I have a relationship with you, love you? How can I trust you? How can I trust you if I don't know you? I want to trust you. Hey, Lord, I want to rely on you. But how can I do it if I don't know you? Hey, Lord, I really want to commit to you. I know I need to commit to you. But how do I do that again if I don't what? If I don't know you. So my challenge for all of us is to be history makers. We need to do it through relationships. First and foremost, with him. Okay? He models that to us. Second of all is we can make history right here with relationships right here. For us to have relationships here to make history, we need to spend some time knowing each other, asking questions, feeling vulnerable, right? Learning to rely on each other, learning to commit. And I believe through people like that, he's proven himself through the disciples on what they did. I believe that that can happen today, 100%. And I think the reason it's not happening today is because we're lacking relationships. We seek just certain things that fill us up, but we don't seek the whole package to be balanced. All right? So search your heart on those areas of relationships, and we're going to pray. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give you guys a minute to pray, to think on these areas in your personal life. I encourage you to dig deeper. I encourage you to think. And then after that minute of the piano playing and you guys spending some time in meditation, I'm going to pray and finish off this evening. Let's pray. Let's take our time to pray. Lord, we want to thank you for this amazing, quiet evening. We want to thank you first and foremost for the amazing history that you made. You reconciled us back with the Lord. You gave us something that we don't deserve, and we are tremendously grateful. And not only that, you built relationships with some very interesting, different, uncapable, weird men. And you allowed them to change history alongside of you. And we are so encouraged today that you continue to do that. You're calling us, and you're alongside of us to continue to make an impact in this world, to do things that have lasting effects for not only the past but the future. But you're not going to let us off the hook easy, because the way that you want to do that is through a relationship. And that's not a quick fix. That takes time. It's a thing that continues to grow. It's something that needs to be invested into. It's something that also needs to be looked at and evaluated. It's something that doesn't feel comfortable. Sometimes it hurts. Sometimes it doesn't make sense. But that is the process that you chose for us. And I just pray for everybody that's here and for myself that we would take the time, first and foremost, to elevate our relationship with you on all of these categories, that we would be balanced in those areas, and that we would, like you did with us, that we would model that to the people around us by having the same relationships with the people that are here, that we would value those relationships, that we would invest into them, that we would hold them at a level of priority in our life. We love you. We thank you again. We ask that you bless this night and these days to come, and that you would continue to be faithful to work in our hearts, to transform us, to change us, and to impact the world around us. We love you, and we thank you so much. And all God's people said, amen.